Hello, and welcome back to Talks in Class, episode 2. I'm Jenna, and I'm so excited to be here to chat with you guys today. Thank you all so much for being here and listening along. Happy November. I cannot believe it's already November. Every time this comes out of my mouth, I'm like, okay, everybody says this constantly. We love to talk about how fast time passes and how we can't believe it's already this month or already that holiday. And we just repeat these things over and over to all of our other adult friends for our entire adult lives. But it really is true. Time goes so fast. We're going to blink and 2022 will be over, which is so hard to believe. But I think this year, especially, at least for us, this feels like it's going especially fast because we are moving this month in November. Actually, in 3 weeks, I think, from today. So when November 1st hit, it was like, okay, this is real now. It's crunch time. We need to get moving. So we did start packing, and if you are watching on video, you will see the background start to get progressively messier and start to see boxes pile up behind me. So I apologize in advance that I don't have a cuter, more aesthetically pleasing background for this, but just bear with me during this move process. We're making it work. Other than starting the packing process and dealing with all of the details of organizing this cross-country move we're about to embark on, we have been also trying to pack in all the things, all the activities, because these are really our last few weeks here. And also, we both just really love fall, and we know that it's something that we're really going to miss when we're in LA. I remember in Texas, when I lived there, I lived in Texas for about 8 years. It was always so irritating to me come October when I was still sweating and I just wanted to be cozy. So I would shut off, the lights. I would close the blinds. I would crank the AC and put on a cozy sweater, light a fall candle, and just pretend that it was cool outside. So we have been soaking it in, to say the least, this fall. My husband also loves Halloween. It is his favorite holiday, and he just really loves everything about it. So this past weekend, we went to a little family Halloween party when we were up in Connecticut, and that was really fun. We were Chrissy and Eddie from Stranger Things. Very popular Halloween costume this year, but we love Stranger Things, so it was a good one. And really everybody had impressive Halloween costumes. Everybody in the family went all out. So my husband, of course, really appreciated that, but it was really fun. So as I mentioned, I'm going to start every episode with something good that happened. So this week, what good happened is we signed our lease for our new place in LA. So we officially have a home when we arrived there, which is a relief. I was starting to panic just slightly that I didn't even have an address to give to the movers. When I booked them, I just said, I'll have to let you know because we don't have a place yet. So it's a good feeling to know that we're official. I am also going to start ending every episode with a funny or embarrassing moment. So be sure to listen to the end for that today. And with that, let's jump into today's topic. I want to talk about physical media and the impact that it had on people my age. Growing up with pretty much everything physical and living through this transition from entirely physical to now pretty much everything being digital. I was born in 1987. So when I was a kid, everything was physical. We didn't have anything digital when I was a kid. So that meant that anything we wanted to experience for entertainment anyway, any sort of media, was on some sort of physical thing that you had to buy and that you also had to store in your home. And this is really top of mind for me right now because we are packing up all of our belongings and we are both appreciative of physical media and we own a lot. We have a lot of books. My husband keeps Blu-rays. We have old magazines. We're physical media people, records, CDs. And it's a lot of stuff. I mean, it's a lot of stuff that we have to store in a small space. And when I was young, that was just the way that everything was. Music was on cassettes and then CDs. And also, this stuff was expensive. I still know every single track to a lot of the CDs that I had in the late 90s and early 2000s because if you got a CD, you didn't just listen to the one single that was on the radio. You had to listen to the whole thing. That CD probably cost $15. And you had a limited collection of them. You didn't have endless access to endless music. Unless you bought the CD single, you listened to that whole CD and you probably listened to it over and over and over. I certainly did. And this is why I still know every word to every song on Nelly's Country Grammar album. What I was doing with the Country Grammar album in middle school is another story. I have no idea. Highly inappropriate. But that was the way that it was. And it was the same with movies. I can still remember certain movie trailers word for word. I mean, literally word for word, because they were on some of my favorite VHS tapes. And I watched them over and over as a kid. And sometimes I guess I was just too lazy to, go press fast forward and wait for the trailers and then try to stop it at just the right moment. So I just watched those trailers over and over and over with those VHS tapes that I watched over and over and over. When I was really young, my first memory of this was with The Wizard of Oz. When I was probably, 5 or 6, I was obsessed. And I think that's an understatement. Whatever the word beyond obsessed is, that was me with The Wizard of Oz. I watched it every day. Every day, my poor mother. And I would pretend that my cat was Toto and I'd try to put her in a basket, and she was a cat, so she was not into it. But over and over and over, I knew every single word. And then in 8th grade, I remember it was Empire Records. Again, I would watch it over and over. In 8th grade, I would literally watch the VHS of Empire Records, rewind it, and then start it over again. And I would just let it play all day long while I was chatting on AOL or cutting out pictures from magazines to hang on my wall or whatever I was doing. But even though I loved these movies and I loved these CDs, we did this out of necessity. We watched the same movies, we listened to the same CDs, we even read the same magazines cover to cover multiple times because that was all we had. We didn't have access to more stuff when we were done with this stuff. We had to wait until next month for 17 to release a new issue so that we could have new hair tips and beauty tips to read. We had to wait for our birthday or Christmas or whatever holiday to get a new CD or maybe a new movie on VHS, or we had to go to the video store to rent one, but that required money and a parent or later a car. It wasn't that easy. We didn't have these things at our fingertips. And I was thinking about what was my earliest experience with having just easy access to media, and it was Napster. It was the introduction of Napster. And when I say that this blew our minds, you guys, I still remember exactly where I was when I first heard about Napster. Like, this was a significant moment. I was on the school bus on my way home from middle school. I ran right home. I immediately downloaded it. I probably destroyed the family computer right there on that day, in that moment in the process. And I still remember this. I downloaded Big Pimpin' by Jay-Z. That was the song I chose. And it probably took, 5 hours. But I just remember thinking, this is incredible. Where did this come from? I just pressed a button on my computer and I went upstairs and did my homework, and I came back, and now this song that I didn't buy, I didn't go to the store and buy a CD, but this song is playing on my computer, and it blew my mind. And that was in 2000 probably, but it really wasn't until 2006, maybe 2007 that I completely stopped buying CDs entirely. And by that point I had an iPod, but I still burned CDs so that I could listen to them in my car. And this is something that I think that we forget sometimes when we look back, is that there were these transition periods too. It didn't just flip a switch. So I like to show a disposable camera in a lot of my videos that I post, and there's always comments that are like, oh, we would have had a digital camera by then. Or the same thing with burned CDs. They're like, we had iPods by then. Absolutely. By 2007, I totally had an iPod, but I definitely still burned CDs too, because again, I needed them for my car. But also, if I was going over to my friend's house to like pregame before we went out, I would bring a CD and we would play it in the CD player, because I didn't know anybody who had an iPod dock thingy. That was expensive. We didn't have that. We were college students. So there are these transition periods where there are new technologies, but we haven't fully adopted them. And I think that kind of gets lost when we look back, because it seems to go from A to B. when really it's A, muddy, period, B, right? And just like pictures, physical pictures going to digital, for me, physical media entertainment was dominant, certainly throughout high school. I mean, that was the way that we experienced music and definitely movies. And when it comes to pictures, I mean, I didn't get my first digital camera until my freshman year of college, which would have been late 2005. And I'm sure that there are people who had digital cameras by then, but thankfully I didn't, because of course I lost that thing, within a month of getting it. So probably for the best that I was using film throughout high school, but that really means that until I was 18 years old, for 18 years of my life, I only used film to take pictures. And that means if you wanted to take a picture, you had to load film into an actual camera, or you had to buy an expensive disposable one. Those were expensive. You had to take the picture. You had no idea what that picture actually looked like. You maybe had to waste an extra exposure if you forgot to turn the flash on, or you noticed your finger was in front of the lens or whatever. Then you had to wait until that roll of film was used up so that you could take it in to get developed. Then you had to wait a couple days to get it, to pick it up. Or if you wanted to like really blow some serious cash, you could pay for 1 hour photo, but that was expensive. Actually, I recently found in an old book of pictures a receipt from 2001. I found this at my mom's house, and it was for 3 rolls of film getting developed. It was $36 in 2001. That's a lot. I mean, that's a lot of money. That is expensive. So it was a big deal to have media, and it was a big deal to have pictures of stuff. Now you just click your phone. You can take as many pictures as you want. You can see them immediately, and then you can discard the ones that you don't like, and you're left with the best ones, the best angles, the best lighting, the most flattering image of yourself or whatever it is that you're taking pictures of, the best representation of that thing. And there's also pictures of everything. You don't have to be discerning with your photos because you're not wasting actual film when you take that picture. And I was thinking about this, and I wonder how this will impact this younger generation in how they remember their experiences. Maybe they'll have more vivid memories about things because everything is documented. There's evidence, photo evidence and video evidence of every single thing really that they do everywhere they go. I have a ton of photos from when I was growing up, and I have some video too. My parents had a camcorder, and my mom was really into that thing. I probably have certainly more pictures than a lot of people, but again, as a teen who is still very much using film throughout high school, I don't have pictures of everything. I only have pictures from certain social events. Definitely those big deal ones like homecoming, graduation, prom, but just random times that I was hanging out with my friends, I don't have pictures of every single event. Maybe somebody brought a disposable camera to this one party for some reason, or maybe my friends and I decided to bring a camera to school one day because it was someone's birthday or some other exciting event was happening, but we don't have pictures of every single party or every single casual hang the way that teens today have pictures of everything. If you look through your camera roll, there's evidence of so many things that you do. But when I look back at those pictures, those events that I do have pictures from are extremely vivid memories in my mind. When I look at those pictures, I can tell you exactly whose house we were at. I can tell you what year it was in high school. I can tell you who was there. It's a vivid picture. And I haven't been in those houses for 20 years, most of them. And I think I remember them so clearly because those are the ones that I have documentation of. All the other ones that weren't documented because no one had a camera, those are just kind of, lost to time. Like maybe I have a foggy memory of this one party or this one time that we went to the mall and did something or a movie that we went to see. But for the most part, those things just happened. We were in the moment. We didn't document them. And now they're lost. They're just gone. They happened and that's it. We also had to take what we could get when it came to pictures. If you got your film back, and every single picture was horrible. Every picture was blurry, or your finger was in front of it, or you just looked really bad. It was a bad angle. You had a double chin, whatever. It didn't matter. We could not be picky. We had what we had. I still took those horrible, unflattering pictures and I hung them in my locker. I hung them on my bedroom wall because it was either unflattering pictures or nothing. And I wanted to hang my friends' pictures on my wall. When it comes to my bedroom walls, they were absolutely covered. So not only was I really into, engaging with physical media, but I was using it as decor. And I need to know if kids do anything like this anymore, because I would spend hours on this. I would spend hours cutting things out from magazines, making collages, hanging pictures of my friends all over the walls, cutting out like little phrases or words from magazines and sticking it on pictures that kind of corresponded with the words or phrases. I mean, it was like a whole thing. And it was primarily really stuff from magazines that I was using to decorate pictures of my friends that were probably kind of bad. And in the early days of the internet, the pre-social media internet, magazines are what we had. Sometimes I would go online and I would print out a picture from the internet, but that ink was expensive and you had to get on the dial-up and it took a long time. I mean, magazines are what we had in the absence of the internet that we know today. And it's funny that this seems like such a quaint thought now, but magazines were really our resource for pretty much everything. I mean, you could go to a magazine to find your celebrity gossip. That's how we kept up with fashion trends. That's where I found beauty tips. I mean, we didn't have YouTube, so there was no makeup tutorials. You had to read it in 17 magazine. But even just to find relatable stories about other teenagers, magazines were our best resource for that. Because we had our friends, our immediate friends from school, of course, but the only way to really understand teens from your immediate circle, beyond your school or your town or your family, was to either watch MTV or to read the advice columns and the embarrassing moments in magazines. And you could read those advice columns or those embarrassing moments and understand that what you were feeling or what you were going through or experiencing was normal and beyond your small circle, your small bubble. It was a universal experience and that you weren't alone. And it was one of the ways, pre-internet for sure, that I remember being able to feel some connection to the outside world beyond my little bubble of what I knew. Now, we're so interconnected that it's almost impossible to imagine that our lives and our experiences really were confined, for the most part, to the people that we knew in real life. I mean, that's like a mind-blowing thing to think about now, is that we only could experience and see people that we knew in real life and what the very curated media selected to show us. It's so different from now, where we have access to so many different stories and people via social media and just the internet in general. And I think that is why early reality TV, things like The Real World, Super Sweet 16, MTV Cribs, things like that, were so fascinating and such a cultural moment when they came out, because we could finally see into the lives of people that we didn't know, the personal lives of people that we didn't know. And sure, it was curated, but it was so different from what we were able to experience before that. And we could see people who lived in very different parts of the world as us, or different parts of the country, people who lived totally different lifestyles and just were not like us for the first time. And I think in a lot of ways, social media has come in and kind of replaced a lot of this physical media all at once. And it fills a lot of the same purposes that early reality TV did as well. So obviously you can go on social media now and find your celebrity gossip and your makeup tutorials and your fashion inspiration and your suggestions of stuff to buy. But you can also use it to see into the lives of people you don't know in real life, and it's all at our fingertips now. That's the big thing, is like this access. It was not that easy for us before the digital age. We had to work for our media. It was not that easy. People around my age, millennials, whatever you want to say, we lived through this entire transition. I mean, we saw this shift happen, and it kind of happened as we were growing up too. And we experienced a shift ourselves in the way that we interact with the world, how we interact with each other, certainly, as this transition in media was happening at the same time. And, like I mentioned before, this idea of life pre-internet, pre-interconnection all the time, it just reminds us of a time when life was more simple, when life was more carefree, because we were young and we just didn't have that many real responsibilities back then. So I think physical media just naturally feels very nostalgic. But I do think that there is something else to it. There's something more to it. There is something about having something tangible. It's yours, you can hold it, you can interact with it. Flipping through a magazine to me feels so different than scrolling through Pinterest. You're interacting with it in a different way. And you also can't lose it. You're not going to lose it due to a computer crash or some rights conflict between streaming services or whatever. So I think that physical media is special. For me, it really feels special. And like I said, I'm a physical media person, but I am just so happy that I have so many of those things from when I was younger. I love watching a VHS tape, even though the quality is terrible. I could just stream it and it would look and sound much better, but there's something different about the way that I'm interacting with that. And my favorite thing then and now is magazines. I love them. I loved them as a teen, obviously being a fashion and celebrity obsessed teenager. They were my favorite thing. So I'm going to close this discussion by sharing my top 5 favorite things about teen mags in the 2000s. Number 1, the embarrassing moments in YM. I'm sure other magazines did these embarrassing moments too, but YM always stands out in my mind, and it was one of the first things I would flip to whenever I got a new issue of YM. Looking back, I'm not entirely sure that these weren't made up, but they were wild. I mean, they really made me feel better about myself and certainly minimized how embarrassing I thought my own embarrassing moments were. If you can get your hands on an old YM magazine, I highly recommend reading some of them because they're quite entertaining. Number 2, the horoscopes. I don't know if this was just me or if this was a universal thing, but I was obsessed with the horoscopes. And this is one of the very first things that I remember really loving about magazines, even in late elementary school, like 5th, 6th grade, when I would beg my mom at the grocery store checkout to get me a magazine. The horoscopes were my first stop. I would look at those immediately. And I don't know if I was just hoping that the horoscope would tell me that, my crush was going to fall in love with me or my hair would magically turn blonde or something, but I do remember it being quite devastating whenever the horoscope wouldn't tell me what I what I wanted it to tell me. And then I had to wait another month to get a new issue to hopefully get a better, fortune from the astrology columnist at 17 magazine. But I love the horoscopes. Number 3, the workouts. I have a lot of old magazines, and I have to say the workouts really are pretty questionable. And they are advertised as magic pills. They'll be like, get J-Lo's abs in these 4 moves, and the moves are just 4 different variations of crunches. I mean, they're nothing special, but I loved them, and I would cut them out, and I would hang them on my mirror in my bedroom. Side note, I'm not sure if it was just me and girls in teen movies, but I covered my mirror in pictures and stuff from magazines. Did we all do this? And if so, why? It completely defeats the purpose of a mirror. You can't see anything. Like, get a corkboard. I don't know. Number 4, the real teen style sections in magazines. These were probably my favorite thing. These were the sections that would profile normal people or normal teenagers and show what they wore and where they shopped and what they liked. It would usually list some favorites of theirs. Sometimes it would show how they decorated their dorm room or something like that. And before social media, this was my only way to see how other teens, usually in larger cities or just other parts of the country, dressed or where they shopped or what they liked. And this was, again, my window into the outside world. So it felt like being able to watch like cooler versions of myself in a way that I could then emulate. So I was never super into the more editorial fashion spreads because I wasn't going to wear those things, you know? Same thing as watching the teen dramas on TV. I wasn't actually going to wear those things because I could not buy designer clothes, but I could look at YM Magazine profiling a freshman at NYU, for example, and think to myself, oh, wow, this is a 19-year-old cool older teenager in New York City, and they're saying that they shop at these stores and they wear these types of styles. I also can go to those stores, or at least I can find those styles in my mall. So I loved it. And again, I think this is why I gravitated so strongly towards reality TV. You know, things like Laguna Beach or even Bug Juice on Disney Channel, they were real kids. They were kids that I could emulate or at least try to copy their fashion sense, which I did, obviously. And then number 5, this is my actual favorite, the advertisements. When I look back at magazines even now, the ads are the best part, hands down. They're such a clear snapshot of the culture and the trends and just the zeitgeist of the time. And I think on some level, even then, we realized that those ads were just a more artistic representation of what was happening in trends and pop culture. And I loved them. I'm really fortunate I have some actual photographs that I took of my bedroom in probably, it's either 2001 or 2000. And the number of magazine advertisements I have on my wall, I mean, there's probably more magazine ads on my walls than pictures of my friends. So I loved them. And it was all about just the vibe, the feeling that that ad was giving me. You know, I loved like the Roxy and the Quicksilver and all of those surf vibe ones. And any denim brand, they all just had like great advertisements, great vibes. And I loved them. Loved, loved, loved. As promised at the top of the episode, I am going to close this all out with my own little embarrassing moment since we're on the topic of it while discussing the YM ones. So this is something that lives rent-free in my mind and probably always will. When I was a kid, I went to camp every summer and I loved camp. And every camp was themed. And one year I was fortunate enough to go to horseback riding camp. And horseback riding camp was a really big deal because we actually got to go out on rides and, you know, leave camp and go out on these trail rides. So one day we were out riding, we stopped for lunch, and we had one of those giant coolers for whatever beverage we were drinking. Honestly, it was probably Kool-Aid, but it was definitely some sort of sugary beverage. And I don't exactly remember what happened, but somehow it spilled all over me, like all down the front of me. I was covered in Kool-Aid or whatever sugar water that it was. And I completely freaked out. I mean, I was so upset. I was horrified. I was so embarrassed. We were far away from camp. We had to ride back. So I was just so upset. And I remember distinctly screaming for some reason, "Oh my God, I'm going to be Bug City." And I guess what I meant was that I thought I was going to get attacked by flies or something because I was covered in Kool-Aid. But why I chose those words, I'm not sure. But my friends thought this was hilarious and endlessly tortured me about this throughout the rest of camp. And I still remember it to this day. And that was probably 25 years ago. So with that, thank you for listening to episode 2. Please subscribe, share with a friend, show your love however you want. And as always, let me know what topics you want me to talk about. I will be back next week. Thank you so much. Bye.